Right. So guys, what do you want to talk about this afternoon? Now I'm going to have to talk to some of the bachelor students and set up meetings for my students who I'm supervising groups of. But what do you guys want to talk about this afternoon? What aspect? So we started and we had this. Oh, that's women in demand. That was one of the other things he had done. So if I just go back, the oath. So what do you agree with? What is easy to do? I don't know why that one's turned itself off.
It happens at the room.
Oh. Sorry. All the screens have turned themselves off here. So right, I can turn that. They're screwed out. I can't even turn it around.
Try plugging in pin and up.
There you can. Well, I think this is fine. I think it's just that those have all kind of gone to sleep. Ah, it's because it thinks it's Hercule and Yervik, obviously. They haven't updated the graphic. So if I change the screen, maybe it will make the others wake up. Nope. Okay, well, you can just hunt around. So, what one of these did you think was reasonable? Or unreasonable?
Can you zoom out?
I can try. He writes too much on his blog. Okay, so I will not produce harmful code. What is harmful code?
Code created with malicious intent, probably. Either is there to compromise the company you're working for example, or
So
the users.
Backdoors and things. So there's and also so one of the questions comes in: should you program the tracking system for a heat-seeking missile? Do you program the targeting system for a cruise missile?
We make the case that it depends. I mean, someone will do it anyway, so.
So there's an interesting discussion around. Okay, so we're going to start more of a ethics discussion because I take it not many of you have started programming your bachelor thesis yet. Some of you might have, but you don't have a lot of code yet. But so we can talk about some of these wider issues. So there certainly is a pacifist argument for writing good quality missile targeting systems, right? And one argument for it is, as you said, somebody's going to write it. If I believe that I'm a good programmer and that I'm conscientious, that I will write the absolute best targeting system I can and make sure that if some general somewhere decides to kill a person, that my system will always get that person perfectly. Because if they don't, what the militaries tend to do is they increase the payload to increase the number of people that get killed. So as long as it gets someone within the vicinity of that person, all 50 of those people get killed, right? So if you're a bad programmer and your targeting system doesn't work particularly well, they'll just kill more people until they can get it right, right? So one pacifist argument is a utilitarian one is I'm decreasing the number of people who will get killed because I'm writing a targeting system will kill just the person they want dead. Right? Now, there is another argument that says that you can go down a kind of Platonic route and say that no, if you're doing a bad thing, actually no, it's Aristotelian. If you're doing a bad thing, you're doing a bad thing, right? You just refuse to be involved in programming weapons of mass destruction. This is just, no, I don't want to be involved in killing people. That's just off the table. It's not, yeah, I'm not going to touch it at all, right? This probably goes on the pacifist end, right? It says, you know, we don't program systems that target people and kill people. I personally have one of my graduates. He was doing military contracts and he was working on the So this is the question here. He was doing the real-time checking for the servo motors on the machine guns that sat on APCs, right? So armored personnel carriers have a machine gun on the roof, and it's servoed so that you've got your wee kind of iPad equivalent screen in next to the driver, and you can press on the screen and it will shoot where you're pressing on the screen, right? So it turns and turrets and targets and shoots wherever you pick the enemy at. You go bang, you click that, it highlights that, does an edge detection on it, works out that an enemy, and then starts shooting that enemy. Okay? So you have to make sure all your servos are right, including your servo that's pulling the trigger. Right? Because as a programmer, you don't want it to kind of fail. And so he was writing the code that did all of the servo checking. Right? So in real time would test the servo, trigger it, see if it moved, that it was responding correctly to all the things. Right? And that it was unloaded, and test the trigger servo as well. Right? So you test everything. Is he working on harmful code?
I mean, probably saving lives as much as he's taking them.
Potentially, because you know, if the machine gun you have on your APC starts firing in random directions, you might kill a whole bunch of people in a normal exercise, for example, rather than an actual war.
And having good code that text in the servos could be used for other things than just machine gun on a small carrier.
Yeah, so he was working for a military contractor, so that all that code was being used for, because you know it is military precision real-time operating systems. But yeah, as someone who doesn't want to be involved in killing people, are you involved in killing people when you're programming to check the system that is used to kill people? Do you guys have an ethical problem with that?
Well, in a way, yes you are. And it can happen, but you don't know. If 100,000 soldiers will use your algorithm or whatever you make, most likely one of them will kill an innocent person with an accent because of your technology.
Yep. So, as programmers, do you personally feel responsible for how your code is used?
But isn't this the whole I made the gun but I don't know if it's going to use to murder someone or defend against a murderer argument?
That argument does exist, yes, and there are people fall on a scale, right? I'm not saying there is a right answer to this, right? Because people have to find where they're comfortable. So bump stocks, for example, right? So the Las Vegas shooter was using a bump stock to turn his semi-automatic into a fully automatic, and the argument for bump stocks is it allows disabled people to fire guns, right? Because they won't be able to properly hold the gun, so the bump stock allows them to reload the gun without having to reload it because they're disabled. And so that's apparently what that's how they justified making them, rather than the, oh, and by the way, it also turns your semi-automatic into a fully automatic. Right? Ethically, so that was working around a piece of legislation around you're not allowed to have fully automatics. A bunch of those people feel that you should be allowed to have fully automatic weapons, right? Or anti-personnel weapons, shotgun pistols, whatever weapon you like, right? So the argument goes that anti-personnel weapons and assault rifles aren't used for anything other than targeting humans. So you're probably, when you're selling those to people, there is that whole, well, there most likely be, that's kind of the only reason that they're designed, is around killing as many people as possible. They're not for hunting, and they're not for sport, and they're not for any of those.
No, but in this argument, if you count the military as the good guys, you're helping the good guys. Because you're hoping they're not just used to massacre civilians.
Yeah. So you could still argue you make your semi-automatics, you make your assault rifles for the military, and you don't sell them to civilians, right? And depending on your ethical framework, that might be fine. So for a lot, so as a programmer, you each will have to develop a set of ethical frameworks around what you're willing to do right? Because at some point you may well be asked to do things as a programmer that you're uncomfortable with, right? And at some point you might need to decide, right, I'm going to take an ethical stand that I'm not going to do what I've been asked to do, not because I can't do it, but because, like this oath, I choose not to, because it goes against my ethics, right? I've only done that once. Just trying to think, have I only done that once? I think I've only done it once. I might have done it a second time when I was working commercially for my game company, for the game company. But the one that sticks in my mind is that when I was 4th year, so a year older than you guys, 4th year at university, I was doing an artificial intelligence course, which was on expert systems, and our the lecturer, her husband worked in the hospital, and he was in charge of radio oncology. So he was looking at brain tumors, and he was a surgeon, brain surgeon, and they had a list of people who had brain tumors from you do the scan and you find, you've got a brain tumor, and they could treat about 100 people per year. They added 200 people per year to the waiting list because they were finding 200 per year. They could treat 100 per year. They had 300 on their books, and the number of people on their books stayed constant because if you didn't get treatment, you died. So 100 people are dying, and of the 200 people that come in, about half of those are going to die because you don't treat them, because you don't have the resources to treat them. So what they wanted to do, and so what they'd do is they would measure the 200 people coming in and decide, okay, you're too far gone, we're not going to treat you, or you've got a really small tumour, we can treat immediately, so we will treat you. And then a whole bunch in the middle where saying, you've got a big tumour, but you're quite young, so you're likely to survive, and they'd do a prognosis of how, and up to that point, they would just measure your medical data and say, how likely are you to survive, right? The treatment. And that was, prognosis. Are you going to survive the treatment? And they would operate on the people who had the best chance first, right? That's how they ranked. The government had told them at the time, so this was 96, the government had said, we're getting some pushback from society about the way that we're treating people, right? Because, there were a couple of cases of solo mums who are in their 20s who died because they didn't receive treatment for their brain tumour. And the doctors are saying, yeah, but they didn't have much chance of survival, and that 68-year-old man had a much better chance of survival. The government's saying, yeah, but she's got 2 small children. And they're saying, yeah, but that's a social factor. We don't measure social factors, right? We measure how likely you are to survive, not are you a good person, right? That was not something they used to work out whether to treat you. So what they wanted us to do, and what they got us to do as 4th year students, was to write up an AI program that would rank patients on their prognoses from the medical data, and then add in social factors. And so our job was to work out how many points you got for being a solo mum, and how many points you got per child you had, and how much social value you as an individual had by your contribution to society. Put those in as numbers and rank them against how big your tumour was and how likely you were to survive and what other medical conditions you had. And then produce a list for them so they could justify why they treated some people above other people. Right? Now, we wrote that program, and we then, at the end, we wrote the report on it, and then we refused to hand over our source code. We said, we wrote it, it does what it's supposed to do, and see, we can show you the report that says that it can do what it's supposed to do. We're not comfortable letting our code be used for this, right? We're not comfortable saying that the number I happen to choose for how much each child is worth to you getting medical treatment for something that will kill you if you don't get treatment. At 20, I'm not willing to make that judgment. I didn't feel that was something I could do, right? That I was willing to say, yeah, that's what my code's certainly going to measure those kids accurately, right? So at that point, I did, no, I can't, we're unwilling to make that step, right? Now, I'm not the only person who will face that kind of challenge, right? You as professionals, when you go out there, you could be asked to do this sort of thing, right? And certainly, when algorithms are making more and more of the judgments on whether you like driving and car loans and all sorts of almost anything now is being automated. What would you guys have done? Would you have handed over the code and made it someone else's problem? I didn't, because I didn't feel comfortable. But one of the other programmers in our group said, yeah, well, she didn't really mind because she figured they would just change the numbers anyway, right? So if we handed over, they would define, like, there's a clear file of, like, you know, this is the first kid points, this is the second kid's points, and they could change those points. So, you know, the code does what the code's supposed to do, right? But
again, you kind of don't just design the tool, and it depends on how they are going to use it.
yeah, yeah. So
It's more like it's a tool that someone can use how they
You
It's a
just
tool.
like using it, but the responsibility is how it's used.
you still need to teach them how to not misuse it.
You could have just handed over without the numbers.
just stripped all the numbers out and said, no, they're all not a number, not a number, not a number. So if you've got children, we can't calculate you anymore.
It's like, hey, you guys make the numbers. We don't want to do it.
Yeah, you guys make the so you know, it's a challenge, right? But this is a real challenge that you people will have to work out a reasonable thing. So one of the things that I've been thinking of for AI, right, is that the trolley problem for, you know the trolley problem for AI, right? So some of you know the trolley problem, some of you don't know the trolley problem. Okay, so the simple trolley problem, and you can look up trolley problem online and it will show you lots of examples of it, which is the standard trolley problem is you come across a lever that changes the track, right? So you're at railway track, there's a train coming down the railway track, and you're standing next to a lever and it can make the train go down track A or track B. On track A, which it's currently set for, there is a family of 4 sitting on the track, right? And on track B, there's 1 person. Do you change the lever and choose to kill that 1 person, or do you leave it alone and let it kill the 4 people? And how do you make that decision? Right? That's the trolley problem, right? Because if you do nothing, are you responsible for the death of the 4? If you do one thing, are you responsible for the death of the 1? If that person, if the 4 people, you know, one of those was Hitler, and you killed someone who was going to be a mass murderer, would have that been the better thing to have done, right? And what if the 1 person was, like, you know, a Nobel laureate who was about to cure cancer, and you killed them, and, you know, you lost the cure? How do you know the effect you're going to have on the world, right? And there are lots of different ethical frameworks that allow you to do that. Now, autonomous cars are coming across this particular challenge around, if I'm coming up to an intersection very fast and a kid runs out into the road, do I kill the child or do I kill the people in the car? As an autonomous car, which do I choose?
Haven't they figured out no one's going to buy the car if they have the risk of actually getting killed in that instance? If they know the car might save the child instead of the people in the car, no one's going to drive the car.
Well, you see, in Norway, you could make it the law that the car has the responsibility to try and save the pedestrian.
And then people
Right?
might not jump on the train and they use it. They might not end up using the autonomous car.
Well,
One get bicycles.
Yeah.
yeah, you might not have a choice, because in Central Oslo you might not be allowed to be in any other car than an autonomous car, right? Because, you know, they say, well, if humans in cars are too dangerous, right? Because they kill too many people, like pedestrians. But yeah, so the trolley problem is a real problem for AI programmers right now. Is the who do you kill?
Coin flip.
Randomly.
I know the perfect solution. We make autonomous people too.
Autonomous people, and they communicate with the car before they go on the crossing, saying, "Oh, no, I'm about to go on the crossing. Oh no!" We'll handshake and go, "Oh, right, semaphores, right? No, okay. I'll wait. You can take the road. Then I'll have the road after you." If we could just automate the whole traffic process, including all the children with their RFID chips in them that kind of emanate the. Yeah, GPS chip everyone and have you broadcasting your location and your intentions, so that we know exactly where you are and what you're about to do.
Wouldn't
No
that
road
make
access.
sense, though, that the person running out on the road be responsible for the people in the car dying?
Come charge a kid.
Potentially.
Because, I mean, if it was like that, you could really abuse it if you wanted to be honest.
Yeah, have a kid jump in front of a
Well,
car.
you know, but you could go and jump in front of cars all the time. You know,
It's like, hey, our neighbors are driving. Go, hurry.
Rah! The guy goes, boom! Screw you! So, yeah.
There's the utilitarian argument that you look at the amount of people who die in the car and the amount of people who die outside the car, and then decide which is the kind of cold, hard way to look at it.
And utilitarianism is merely one of the potential ethical frameworks that you can use, right? So there's deontological, there's consequentialism, there's a bunch of ethical frameworks that you can come up with, right? But basically, rather than say what's the right way to do it, right? Because I'm not going to be able to tell you what is the right way for you guys, right? But it's worth thinking about what your ethical frameworks are, right? Because sometimes when you end up in these situations where you have to, like, as a programmer, you're having to make this decision, right? You may be quite stressed because the project is running late or you're being pushed and you've got to get it done, and that's not a great time to sit back and reflect on your life and work out what kind of person you are, right? It's far better to do that now, right? So you've already kind of had some thinking about what you're willing to do as a programmer and where your lines are, so that when you're extremely stressed, you can remember what you were thinking about rather than just try and come it up like during a stressful time. So that's to some extent why discussing these sort of things now. I actually personally think that what the law should do with AIs and these sort of things is make them parameterizable, right? So what you guys are suggesting is leave the numbers out. So the trolley problem should be defined in Norway by Norwegians, right? That whether cars kill the passengers or civilians, or the ratio of, if like one of the standard ones is, if I have a meeting in Oslo in 3 hours time, right? If my car knows when my meeting is, should it just drive really slowly and take me 3 hours to get to Oslo? Because that's far safer, right? Because if all the autonomous cars, it will just let all the other autonomous cars go past it, right? While it hovers along slowly, crawling along the road, and takes 3 hours to get to Oslo, because it knows that I've got a meeting there in 3 hours, so I don't. And if I tell it go faster than the minimum, am I personally taking responsibility for the accidents that might be caused by it going faster than it knows it could go?
We should also push for the car to not drive faster than it thinks it can handle. Like if there's a child jumping in front of the car, can it actually react to it? Is the road safe enough to drive the speed it's currently driving in?
Yeah. So those limits of where you make that distinction. Because in Norway, you use 80k as your open road speed limit, right? Because you're far less likely to kill people if you're traveling at 80k than if you're traveling at 100 or 120, right? But that's a societal decision around the amount of risk the rest of us are willing to take to let you have convenience, right? So in Norway, we don't really care about your convenience. It's going to take you a long time to get anywhere, so screw you. In America or in Germany, they say, no, driving fast. We want to get there efficiently. So We're willing to take more risk so long as we can get there when we want to get there, right? It's a societal balance on how much risk people take, right? If an autonomous car, just saying what the speed limit is, right, that's a proxy for how much risk you're willing to take with other people's lives. So as you're saying, when the road conditions are bad, that risk estimate should be what's used, not just a speed limit.
You can get ticketed if you drive at the speed limit if there's a blizzard, for example.
Yeah, so in Norway, if you're not driving to the road conditions, you can still be ticketed for dangerous driving, right? So the autonomous car needs a sense of what dangerous driving is like, and that needs to be different in Norway and Germany and Italy. And if you've ever been in a taxi in Spain, it's kind of so yeah, but that is those decisions, right? And part of this writing harmful code, always doing your best work. Those are some of the decisions you guys need to start thinking about now, as to where are your limits, right? I assume none of you have been asked to program something have any of you asked to use something that you felt uncomfortable with at university?
Oh, well, slightly. Well, not too uncomfortable. It was like at work, it was like a really, really strange Excel VBA macro, which used like all COM objects and stuff, and it was like really, okay, this is like the biggest information security risk imaginable, because it's like really, really unsafe. But the boss was, no, it's convenient, just let's program it. And I was like, no, that's not. We could as well like advise our passwords in the newspaper.
Yeah, so you've been asked to do things you knew were going to be really, really insecure and really bad way of doing it, and they said just do it that way because it's fast, right? And you know, there are potentials for you to end up in that's a security ethical concern, and you know, there is a point at which you might have to say I'm willing to be sacked over refusing to do this job, right? And as a professional, you having your own ethical system independent of your boss telling you what to do, right? If you are just a tool, right? If you just do what your bosses tell you to do, then you're not a professional, right? You are a tool, right? You are a smart tool, but you're a tool that just does what you're told, right? As a professional, you have your own responsibilities for your own work, right? And what you've done. So if you are unwilling to live with the consequences of your code, then sometimes you have to walk away. I had one of my students was working on Snow Crash. It was making a game where that was inspired by Snow Crash, right? So the skateboarding. So the idea that you hang onto cars and skateboard, right? So you've got a hoverboard and you can move around the city quickly by holding onto cars and doing those sort of things, right? So it was a game around that, and he was trying to get the rights to use Snow Crash because that was the original book that he was referring to. So he talked to the author, sent emails back and forth, and it seemed to be going reasonably well. And then with the agent, and then he got a message back saying that nope, the author has decided no. And part of the reason he decided no is because he regretted writing the book, because regularly over the years since he'd published it, kids were being killed by simulating that with skateboards. They'd be on a skateboard, they'd grab a car, they'd coon along just like the car, and then they would get crushed by the car behind them, right? And so they'd slip off and they'd die, right? And repeatedly when he saw these sort of things, he felt bad that he had released that book because these kids were doing something that he had kind of made look cool in his work, or seem cool. And you know, the Manhattan Project, right? So a lot of the physicists involved in making the first nuclear bomb felt terrible afterwards, right? They actively campaigned to remove nuclear weapons because they felt terrible. They couldn't live with what they had done, right? They weren't proud of the fact they were involved in the Manhattan Project, right?
Did the pilots actually kill themselves, the ones that dropped the Japan bombs?
I think there were at least one suicide from the pilot, yes, because they couldn't live with what they'd done, right? You guys are programmers. You will be implementing code some of that code may kill people. Right? It's worth thinking about how you will respond to that. And do you build some of those resources to reply to that now, while you're at least a little bit calmer than at the end of a project when you're very stressed? Right? And so as a professional, there's this code of ethics. There's the ACM has a very similar code of ethics. One of the things you can do as a professional is say, right, I'm going to use the ACM's code of professional ethics, which means if I do feel uncomfortable with something I've been asked to do, I can point at that code and say, I'm not doing this because of that. Right? And if your boss fires you, you can then go to the code of ethics and say, look, I think this is unfair dismissal, and look, this is the code of ethics I'm following. This is internationally recognized. It's a standard code of ethics. I should be allowed, I'm professionally allowed to have an ethical system. Right? And so you can make your case and have a defense against somebody asking you to do something you're uncomfortable doing. Right? So that's so there's actually, if you're interested in having a longer debate about that, right, and about these code of ethics, it's like Monday the 23rd. So I've got and I probably shouldn't do this with the stream live because you'll see all my secret emails. But the ACM there. So the program is oath. So it's the Monday the 29th of January. Right? So there's that's when the discussion is. If you were wanting to have a discussion, it's 12 o'clock Eastern time, which probably makes it like 6 p.m. Norway time or 8 p.m. Norway time. Right? So it'll be in the evening. But there's an online webinar where you can sign up and discuss this and see what other people discuss around these codes of ethics. Okay? So we've used up our time today, but I thought that's a kind of start of thinking about codes of ethics and thinking about what you do. What would people like us to cover from this list for next week? So, shall we help you set up your version control systems? Who would like to use Jira for their thesis? Yep, that group. You guys are all no because you used it before. We'll set you up with smart commits in Jira, and so so the system's going to be being updated. So rather than doing it right now, because I don't know if you've started coding yet, that you need it immediately, but we'll set you guys up with. So if what I can get you guys to do is send me an email, right, with your email address and the group that you're in, because it's not like. Some of you some of your members are here, so send me a list of who I need to add and your group name and what you want your short name to be and what you want your long name to be, right? So think about who your group are and do that by next week.
Didn't my group already contacted Marius for that?
No, your group will contact Marius. If they're already contacted Marius, then it will be through there, and I'll just add a tag to your repo saying it's also part of 3602. Right? Because I'll just add a tag to the Jira repo and the Jira and stuff to say this is one that I know about because of this course, right? So we can set you guys up for all of that. Send me this week, and so by next week we can go through Jira and how to do version control systems.
Did you mention some logging tool?
So Jira does project logging, so you do time logging into Jira, right? So it also has issues, and it has an issue board where you can move issues. So we'll show you all of that for the project, for setting up for your Jira for the bachelor project. Okay, so send me that information during the week, and then we'll do a session on Jira next week. If you guys don't feel like you need to stay, like these sessions are not compulsory, right? I'm not going to take names and go, aha, you didn't turn up to every session, I'm failing you. No. Hopefully they'll be useful, so you'll come along even if you just sit there working while you overhear what we discuss. But yeah, so if we do Jira next week and set up all the projects and the bachelor projects, and we can discuss the bachelor thesis template as LaTeX template if you like as well. That's on GitHub. If you've not seen it, you can go and have a look at there. If you've got questions, we can discuss that next week as well. Okay? Good. Have a good weekend.
How does the I'll do it, but I'm not going to take responsibility for it?